Thank you for listening to stories at Pink Meow Meow Audio. Hope you enjoy the story. My first night on duty in the emergency department. It was raining very hard, pouring rain as if someone was trying to wash the whole city clean. I remember I had just finished my cold coffee when the ambulance siren sounded outside the door. Someone had a serious traffic accident. Male, about 27 years old, multiple injuries, heavy blood loss. I didn't think much of it, put on my gloves, adjusted my mask, and ran into the emergency room. I was used to seeing blood, but the moment I pushed the door open and saw the man lying motionless on the stretcher, his whole body soaked, his hair covered in blood, my heart suddenly tightened. Not because of fear, but because of a very strange feeling. His face was strangely familiar, not to say familiar enough to make me dizzy. Angular cheekbones, high nose bridge, thick and cold eyebrows, lips tightly pressed, even in a coma, still seemed to carry something very arrogant. I've never met him, but the first look made me want to take a step back as if I believed I had been broken by this person. Had abdominal trauma, abdominal hematoma, and signs of internal bleeding. Take him to surgery now, the chief physician shouted. I gritted my teeth, nodded, and joined the team in pushing the bed into the operating room. The surgical light shone directly on the stranger, highlighting the bleeding wound on his side. I strained my eyes to watch the monitor for survival stats. While Dr. Ching was making an incision to open his abdomen, the man in a deep coma suddenly moved his fingers. A whisper escaped from purple lips. "I'm back?" I almost dropped the suction tube. My heart was pounding. No one else heard that remark. Only I stand closest to him. His voice was small, but not trembling. Not like a comatose person talking nonsense, but like someone who finally met the person he waited for so long. I swallowed, feeling goosebumps rise down my spine. I don't know who you are, but you obviously know me or someone who looks eerily like me. The surgery lasted nearly 3 hours. He was stopped bleeding, his abdominal hematoma was treated, and he was transferred to the recovery room in a stable condition. I followed to assist the doctors in monitoring vital signs after surgery. When we pushed him into the ICU room, the white neon light shone on his pale, cold face, but there was something very strong about it. The head nurse told me to write down the patient's information. I looked at the profile. Name, Thom Duat. Age 27, occupation CEO of medical equipment company MSCH, status car accident due to sudden braking, no relatives accompanying. I was stunned when I read that name. Thom Duat is a name that is both strange and familiar. So familiar that I feel my heart ache. No way. The person named Thom Duat that I know is a high school student. He used to sit at the back of physics class, always wearing a black jacket, always playing with a wood carving knife, and only looked at me once and kept me awake for 3 days. But that was 8 years ago, and I'm not Yi Ning anymore. I am Yi Tring. I changed my name, changed my past, and forgot everything that made me cry. Right? I didn't go back to the dormitory that night. I sat on the hallway bench looking towards his hospital room. I don't know why I see it, sorry I don't remember you, but the way he looked at me even in his daze made me feel as if I had forgotten something very important, a piece of memory that was once bright, once very real. Now I'm so happy under the dust of time that I don't even dare to brush it away to find it again. The next day when I entered the hospital room to check his vital signs, he was awake. That gaze was still the same as the day before, still deep and still made people feel like they were being seen through all the layers of cover. "Good morning, Mr. Thom." I smiled professionally. He looked at me without answering, just tilted his head slightly, his lips curled slightly. A very faint smile, but enough to make me feel a chill run down my spine. Then he said, "I didn't think you would actually stand here in front of me like the first time you walked into the lab that year." I stood frozen, my heart pounding like it was fighting a battle. That lab that year? I had never told anyone about it. Never mentioned the place where I left behind a relationship that had yet to take shape and a boy who had given me a piece of wood with the word trust engraved on it. I raised my head to look at him, his eyes dry. He still smiled, his eyes unblinking. "You forgot, but I didn't. I never forgot." I thought the past was like a locked box. The key was thrown away, the box was covered with dust, no one could open it again. but Thamdua calmly pulled open the lid and placed all the memories I had hidden on the table, looked at me frankly and asked, "You really don't remember who I am?" I'm silent, not because I have nothing to say, but because I'm scared, afraid if I say no, he will be hurt. But if I say yes, the one who will be hurt is me. 17 years old, my name is Yi Ning. That girl is not like me now. Yi Ning used to laugh a lot, laughing because of the royal poinciana flowers in early summer, because of the morning breeze, because of the message clumsily stuffed into the desk drawer from an anonymous person. She liked the color green, liked light rain, and liked the way she leaned her chin on her hand and dozed off by the classroom window, a pencil still in her mouth. At that time, Thamdua was the type of student that everyone avoided, called the troublemaker's boyfriend. He is so good at studying that teachers have nothing to criticize, but his personality is too isolated. Likes to make machines and skip classes. Once he was almost suspended for turning the lab into a mini assembly workshop. But I always felt there was something very sincere in his eyes. And I was right. He once saved me from a minor accident in the lab. That day I was on duty when the high-pressure light bulb on the ceiling suddenly exploded. The glass clattered and fell inches away from me. I stood there frozen and able to react. It was Thamdua who pulled me back very quickly and very decisively. "Next time you want to be an angel, choose a cuter way to die." He said it jokingly, but his hands were still shaking slightly. From that day on, I received small pieces of paper stuffed into books, backpacks, and desk drawers. Unsigned, just a few lines, "Of temperature tests failed, but not your smile. What is the most dangerous thing in the lab? It's me standing by the window and smiling at others." As a girl, I'm not stupid. I knew who wrote it, and I wrote it back, without signing it. We started an unclear relationship, not daring to admit it, but I liked him. It was true, but it didn't last long. My longtime physics teacher was suddenly suspended on suspicion of being involved in a test score fixing scandal. Everything was in chaos. My family was smeared in the local newspaper, I was shunned by my friends, my mother fell ill, and I was forced to drop out of school to avoid affecting the school's image. During that time, I felt like I was living in a bad dream. Thamdua came to see me. He stood in the rain, holding a wooden box, and said, "I don't believe he did that. I will find a way to prove it, but I can't let him get dragged into this. A student with a dirty record, if he continues to have any dealings with my family, could really be expelled." I said the cruelest words, "I never liked you. Those paper colors are not written by me. It's your imagination." I clearly remember when he looked at me, his eyes were empty. He said nothing, just gave me the box and turned away. Inside the box was another handmade piece of wood, loose and warped, but still legible with a message. "Wait for me." The next day, my family moved. I changed my name, changed my school, and tore up everything related to Yi Ning. I am not a 17-year-old girl anymore. I am Yi Tring, a practical, calm medical student who doesn't believe in emotions like before. But today that boy was lying in front of me. Still that look, still that silence when hurt, and still that tenderness that makes people choke up. I thought I had forgotten everything, but just one sentence, "You're back," and everything started to shake. I left the ICU room and walked down the hallway to the hospital's backyard. The June night wind was cool, the smell of antiseptic still clinging to the collar of my white-blue shirt. I looked up at the sky, no problem, but in my heart it's like a star just fell, twinkling and then going out. It's not that I don't remember, it's that I don't dare to remember. Once the past is reopened, every wound will bleed, and I'm not sure I have the strength to bear it again. I thought I survived the storm that year, but now I'm not sure if I survived or just lived on in oblivion. I don't know if I'm doing right or wrong, I just know that every time I see him, my heart aches strangely. The pain is not physical pain, but emotional pain. Remember yourself when you still knew how to dream, knew how to believe, and foolishly sent lines that you didn't dare sign? But all I do now is smile, bow my head, and say, "Sorry, I don't remember." That evening, after my shift, I walked back to the dormitory. The small path through the hospital's backyard was deserted, except for the sound of the wind rustling through the dry leaves. I sat down on the old stone bench where every Monday afternoon a third-year female student would eat a sandwich and read a medical book. As for me, I often silently look at her and randomly guess her age. I pulled something out of my pocket, a piece of old paper folded in four, its edges jagged, as if someone had bitten it lightly out of worry. This is one of those letters that was never sent. I hid it for 8 years. Shenyu, are we both too good at pretending? You pretended not to care, and I pretended not to be moved. But I know the moment you stood in the middle of the lab, holding my hand, the whole world seemed to stop breathing. If one day we grow up, no longer in that high school full of smells and whiteboards, I hope I'll still be brave enough to look at you again and say, I like you. I don't need anyone to believe. I just need you to believe. Inning once wrote these lines at 2 a.m, sitting under the dim study lamp, her hands shaking so much that she almost misspelled her name. But then, I didn't send it. That letter lay silently in the pencil case for months, hidden away like the feelings I never dared to face. The next day, I was scheduled to be on duty with him. The newly opened clinic was sponsored by a medical equipment company, and what a coincidence, the CEO of that company was... It was Thom Duat. He came for a routine inspection and also to check the contract for the endoscope that the hospital had just imported. He was wearing a white shirt, buttoned up at the collar, his left arm still bandaged, but his eyes were so sharp that I didn't dare look at them for long. The nurse assisted Mr. Tham in checking the equipment in room 401, as assigned by the head nurse. I nodded and followed him, hands in Blue's pockets to hide my tension. He said nothing, just walked silently ahead. I walked half a step behind, and just like that, 2 parallel shadows fell on the cold, tiled floor. At the door, he stopped and suddenly turned his head. You once said something very nice, that if we ever get lost in the future, at least we trusted each other once. I stood there stunned. That sentence was indeed what I said in a letter no one knew except the recipient. My heart beat fast, but I kept my voice calm. I don't remember saying that. He nodded as if he was used to that answer. Then I must be remembering wrong. At that moment, I almost shouted, "You're not mistaken. I remember everything. I'm afraid that if I admit it, I will have to pay the price of the trust that you have steadfastly kept for so many years." But I didn't say anything. I just watched him step back, turn around, and open the door to the engineering room. The sunlight shone through the glass window, illuminating his back, the same back that I used to run after in the middle of the schoolyard when I was 17, shouting loudly and laughing like an idiot. "Slow down! I haven't finished talking yet." Then he turned back and smiled. "Then run. Don't leave after you say it." But I left without finishing my words. After my shift, I received a small gift box with no sender's name. Inside the box was a scratched piece of old wood hand-carved with a tin knife. I almost held my breath when I saw it. This is no coincidence. This is the old wooden box. You gave me in the rain the day I decided to leave the city. I remember taking it and turning away without a word of thanks. Now it comes back as a gentle way for him to say he still keeps his word. What about you? I hugged the box and sat with my legs curled up on the bed like a child. Pretending to forget is easy, but pretending not to hurt is something I can't do anymore. Every person has a time when life takes a different turn. For me, that moment came one October morning when I walked into class to see the principal and a strange man standing next to the teacher's desk. My mother's pale face appeared in the back window of the classroom, her hands clutching the strap of her bag as if trying to hold back the falling world. 8 years ago, I was still Yining, a 12D student, not outstanding, not special, just an ordinary girl in a somewhat strict school. My father is a physics teacher at school. Everyone says he is a man of principles, rigid to the point of being unapproachable. But I know he's the gentlest person in my little world. Every day, he takes me to school on his old turquoise bicycle. At noon, I ate lunchbox cooked by my mother, walked home in the afternoon, and occasionally stopped by the lab to help my father clean up the equipment. My life then was simple, neat, and full of hope. Until that day, my father was accused of accepting bribes to raise student scores. There is no clear evidence, only testimony from a powerful parent and several copies of allegedly altered test papers. The school immediately suspended him from work. They called me to the supervisor's office and asked me to take a leave of absence to avoid causing media impact. I still remember the feeling when I left the school gate with my backpack. Each step felt like stepping on nails. The curious looks, the whispers, and the way my old friends avoided me as if I brought the plague. But the worst thing is not the gossip, but the silence of the only person I want to trust. Thom Duat. I have been waiting for him to come, as foolish as a person who believes in fairy tales. I sat on the school steps all afternoon. It was starting to rain, holding a broken hair clip that Thom Duat had secretly reattached for me after I dropped it once. The rain splashed on my face and eyes. I couldn't tell if it was rain or tears. He did not come. The next day, my mother packed her bags. We left the city at 5 a.m. I didn't leave any message or text anyone. I changed my phone number, cut off all connections, and went with the name Yining. I bury letters that I never sent. Right now, Thom Duat still doesn't know that I have remembered everything. Or maybe he knew but didn't expose me. I wonder if he really came to see me that day, would I have left? But then I remembered the day I left. You came. I saw him standing far away under the royal poinciana tree in front of the school gate. Wet sleeves, red eyes. He stood there, but didn't move. He didn't call me either. We are like two trains arriving at the same station, but at different times. That night, I sat in the duty room trying to concentrate on reading the new machine inventory from Stetch, but my mind kept repeating one question. Is he still mad at me? My phone vibrated lightly. It was a text message from an unknown number. Tomorrow at 7 p.m. on the 6th floor rooftop. I typed again. Who was that? No response. But I know only one person who has ever chosen the 6th floor rooftop to hide from the world. The next day, at exactly 7:05 I was standing in the 6th floor hallway. The window was open. The wind blew through my hair, carrying the smell of antiseptic and early season milk flowers. He came later, without knocking. I heard familiar footsteps behind me, and then a deep voice spoke. Someone once left a message on this rooftop saying that if we ever get lost in the future, at least we trusted each other once. I stood there stunned. That sentence was indeed what I said in a letter no one knew except the recipient. My heart beat fast, but I kept my voice calm. I don't remember saying that. He nodded as if he was used to that answer. Then I must be remembering wrong. At that moment, I almost shouted, "You're not mistaken. I remember everything. I'm afraid that if I admit it, I will have to pay the price of the trust that you have steadfastly kept for so many years." But I didn't say anything. I just watched him step back, turn around, and open the door to the engineering room. The sunlight shone through the glass window, illuminating his back, the same back that I used to run after in the middle of the schoolyard when I was 17, shouting loudly and laughing like an idiot. "Slow down! I haven't finished talking yet." Then he turned back and smiled. Then run. At that moment, I felt like I was caught in time. Rainy days, letters go unclaimed. The eyes of the teenagers sitting at the back of the class silently carved the word news on a piece of wood with a rusty paper cutter. I ran away from everything, thinking that forgetting was the cure. But Mr. Tam Dusat wouldn't let me forget. "You stay to keep the trust of both of us, even though you alone keep it." That night when I got back to the dorm, I rummaged through the old drawer. In the pile of crumbled papers, I found what I had hidden for 8 years. A broken hairpin, glued back together, and a letter never sent. "Tam Dusat, if you still remember me, let's make a date one day without storms. I won't run anymore." If this world is a stage, then Tam Dusat is truly the male lead who is under the spotlight, cold, abstinent, and unreasonably talented. Well, not for people like me. We sat across from each other in the 10th floor conference room, where every morning the sound of high heels and expensive coffee machines echoed, I in blue shirt with ink stains on my wrist. He wore a gray vest, white shirt, and a cold silver watch. A medical intern and a healthcare CEO. That distance seems like an entire solar system. The meeting revolved around plans to deploy a high-tech endoscopy room sponsored by his company. I was just a randomly assigned technical support person, not senior enough to sit on the same row as the director. But somehow, I'm still there. Head Dr. Yi Trin tapped her pen on the table. She was in charge of the checklist. Right? I nodded. If you need any help, just ask Mr. Tam directly. Don't be shy. I'm not shy. I was so embarrassed that I almost fainted. I was embarrassed by the way Tam Dusat looked at me with eyes that seemed to know all my secrets, but also didn't bother to reveal them. After the meeting, I bowed my head and left the room as if I didn't see him still standing in front of the elevator door, hands in his pockets, waiting. The door opened and I walked in. He also entered. There were only 2 people in the elevator. Silent. No background music, no human voices, just the sound of my heart beating clearer than the sound of the engine. I tried to look up at the elevator ceiling, pretending to be interested in the light bulb. Suddenly he asked, "How long are you going to pretend you don't know me in this hospital?" I turned around in surprise. He didn't look at me. His eyes were glued to the floor number board. His voice was steady, neither up nor down, but each word was like a stone falling into water. "I'm not Yi Trin. I'm Yi Ning." I pursed my lips and pressed my chest against it. "I knew from the day you adjusted the blood pressure monitor with the same wire you used to do in high school lab. No one does that but me." I snickered, hiding my shiver. "You have a good imagination. Must be fate from a previous life." He turned to look at me, his eyes not angry, just deep. "Past life? If this is a past life, how long do you plan to make me wait in this life?" I looked up to protest, but the elevator doors just opened. He walked out first without turning back, and I stood silently at the door, suffocating as someone pulled the memories out of my chest. That afternoon, I followed him down to the warehouse to check the quantity. The whole warehouse was spacious, smelling of metal, plastic, and new paper dust. I was checking the barcode printer when he suddenly said, "I like the smell of lavender, but I'm allergic to this essential oil." I was stunned. He remembers every little detail, even things you don't think you said. I turned around, trying to keep my composure. "Then you have a good memory." He looked at me for a long time and then stepped closer, very close, only half an arm's length away. "I'm not good at remembering, but I'm good at keeping. I keep every story about you." The air around me seemed to be sucked away. My eyes were glued to his sleeve, which still had dried blood stains from the previous sweat. His left arm was in a cast, but his right hand was still in his pocket as usual, a familiar look that reminded me of the eyes of that young boy from years ago, when first asked, "Do you want to try to trust me?" At night, I lay on my bed, staring at the ceiling as if looking back to when I was 17 years old. Tendusat at that time was not the perfect person he is now. He was often punished by standing, was lazy in physical education, and was once caught by the supervisor disassembling the classroom projector to install a mini speaker. But I trusted him more than anyone and also disappointed him the most. Now that he stood before me with a look that said, "I never blamed you, I didn't know what to do." The next morning, I received an internal invitation to a medical seminar at the institute where the main speaker was Tam Dusat. Topics of emergency rescue equipment in community medicine. He did not choose that topic by chance. It reminds me of something. The first mini first aid kit he designed in 12th grade. I was the first to test it. I sat in the back row of the hall watching him on stage. His voice was deep and warm. His eyes looked at each person as if touching the heart. He has grown up, no longer the teenager who used to write letters in black ink and fold them into hearts. But I still remember every letter, every urgent stroke of the pen, and every unspoken word. At the end of the talk, I received a note from the receptionist. Just one sentence. "If you didn't run that year, what do you think would have happened to us?" I held the paper, my fingers trembling slightly. If I hadn't run that year, I probably wouldn't be sitting here, in a white room, writing an equipment inventory while my heart kept sliding over an old cut. But I ran, and he was still standing there without chasing me, just waiting. Tam Dusat, the son I once pretended to forget. And now it's the man who makes me want to remember everything bit by bit. There are memories that don't need to be reminded, nor do they need to be remembered. It still lives silently in the subconscious. Just a scent, a look, or just a familiar sentence. Everything immediately springs up like weeds after the rain. I have been having dreams lately. Dreams are not clear, but carry a very real feeling. It was as if someone pulled me back to the sunny days of my 17th year on the schoolyard. The bell rang for class, and a boy sitting at the back desk always carried the smell of new wood. I dreamed that I picked up a pen to write a letter but never finished it. I dreamed that someone stood in front of the classroom window smirking. Can you just believe me once? I woke up with a start, my hands still clutching the blanket as if grasping at an opportunity that was slowly slipping away. Recently, Tam Dusat often appears unexpectedly. Like when I'm filling out an equipment report, he appears behind me gently like a handsome ghost. This type of endoscope is not durable, so it is better to import the LX7 type, he said, holding a cup of black coffee without sugar, leaning against the door. I looked at him and asked naturally, "Did you study medicine?" He curled his lips, no, but he had once taken the ultrasound machine apart to see if it was really worth $2 billion. I couldn't help but laugh. That smile is the same as that smile that year. When I saw the boy in the black coat standing in the lab bus, busily fixing the broken projector, "Are you crazy?" I asked. "Yeah, but crazy enough, not crazy enough to make me hate you," he replied. I used to think only young people could say things like that. But it turns out there are people who still keep that voice even after all these years. One afternoon, I was assigned to follow him to survey the new outpatient treatment area. I don't understand why the chief doctor chose me, but I didn't dare refuse. The whole journey was silent. The car glided on the road as if floating in the air. The cold wind of early season blew through the glass door, and I sat next to him, holding my hands on my thighs, trying not to shiver. He asked, "Cold?" I shook my head, but a second later the jacket he was wearing was removed and placed on my lap as a matter of course. I grabbed the edge of his shirt, the familiar scent wafering up to my face. It's lavender, but not the essential oil that I'm allergic to, but the dried scented sachet, exactly like the scented sachets I used to hang in my old school locker. I turned to look at him. He remembers that? He didn't turn back, just said, "I remember everything about you." I snuffled to myself. "That's scary." He replied, still not looking at me. "Yes, you're really scary."
Because you clearly remember but still pretend to forget. That afternoon, we stopped by a small house next to the treatment area where old research equipment was stored. The brown brick house had laterite steps and an old phoenix tree in bud. As soon as I entered, I felt my heart shrink. This house used to be an old medical station that I had visited before. At that time, I was just a curious high school student following my father. Now it has been converted into an equipment warehouse for you. I renovated this place myself, Tom Dot said. Standing in the middle of the room, I glanced around. Wooden table, old bookcase, a study lamp placed crookedly. It was no different from my old room when I was little. He did it from memory. He said no pictures, no model, just remember you told me. I choked up. I didn't remember telling you. But he remembered. A man in his tangled memories still kept the same wall paint color and window direction of the room where a girl lived 8 years ago. It was no longer a memory. It was a belief. As I was about to walk out the door, he called me back. "Have you ever thought about what would happen to us if you hadn't left that year?" I paused. I thought a lot, but never dared to answer. "Don't know," I whispered. "But I know if you had chased me that year, I definitely wouldn't have run that far." He smiled lightly. He didn't chase her away not because he didn't want to, but because he believed that there were people who just needed to stand still to make others come back. I looked up, eyes meeting his. At that moment, I knew I couldn't pretend to forget any longer. At night, I opened the drawer and took out the old mailbox that contained the letters I had written, but never sent. I read every word, but the stranger looked back at himself. I am still a doctor, but I am also Dr. Ning, the girl who once loved someone with all the faith of youth, and perhaps I have never stopped loving him. There are very short sentences, but enough to destroy all the defenses that people spend their whole youth building. Your quote is one of them. If you don't trust anyone, trust me. One last time. That afternoon, it rained. The lingering rain of the city's winter is not heavy, but cold and makes people's hearts sink like an old song playing in the middle of rush hour. I walked from the hospital to the parking lot, carrying a stack of wet documents. Each drop fell drop by drop from the cold neck to the ribs. Just then, a big umbrella covered my head. I'm back to you. White shirt, gray pants, sweaty sleeves, wet hair. We looked at each other for a few seconds, neither of us saying anything. Then he tilted the umbrella to show me more clearly. I clenched the file in my hand, embarrassed. No need. I'm used to it. He did not answer, just repeated softly. I never got used to you getting wet in the rain. I looked up. Those eyes were no longer gentle, but deep. So deep, as if I turned around and walked away, he wouldn't chase after me, but would still stand there waiting. We walked under the umbrella, in silence for a long while. I felt like I was back in the old days when my classmate and I were together after extra classes. The two of them said nothing, only the sound of plastic sandals splashing on the wet cement floor could be heard. At that time, I thought, if there was someone walking by my side like that forever, then I probably wouldn't need to be fussy about anything else in this life. He stopped in front of the equipment area's side hall, a glass-covered space with several wooden benches. He put down the umbrella and turned to me. Yining, I stopped. It's been a long time since anyone called me by that name. I don't need you to love me back. I don't need you to make it up to me, and I don't need you to explain. I just want you to try to trust me. One more time. His voice was as soft as a whisper, but in the space filled with rain and wind, his words echoed clearly and suffocatingly. I opened my mouth to protest, but he raised his hand to interrupt. I don't need an answer now. I know you're still scared. Afraid I bet on the wrong person again. Fear of you and fear of myself. He took another step forward, his hand still not touching me. But baby, there are some people in this world, if you don't trust them, then you will never trust anyone else. I stood there, my hands cold, my heart even colder. But then I remembered, I used to trust you completely, trust you naively, trust you as if there was no one else as kind as you. And the scariest thing is that until now, I still believe. I'm just afraid that belief will hurt me like when I was 17. I turned away and said softly, I used to believe that my father would never do anything wrong. But the whole school turned their backs on him. I used to believe that my mother would be fine, but she died. I used to believe that I was a good person, but in the end, I disappeared from the world you were trying to protect. I took a deep breath, my eyes stung. You don't understand. Tom. There are people who, once they lose faith, never dared to believe again. He was silent, and then he smiled lightly. A very faint smile, but not mocking. It's just sad. I understand, because the first person I ever trusted was you. And the first person to leave me was also you. I turned to leave, but he added that he was still here, still waiting for me to come back. Not because I say yes, but because I believe. Just because someone chose to leave doesn't mean they don't want to come back. I didn't go back to the dorm that night. I walked to the park near the hospital, where there was a small bridge across a lotus pond with all its leaves gone. I sat alone on a wooden chair, hugging a pillow. The wind blew cold. In my head, his words kept repeating, if you don't trust anyone, trust me. One last time. One last time. Those two words made me choke up. I used to think time was the best medicine. But now I understand that there are people that time does not fade, but only makes the longing deeper, the attachment heavier. When I was young and Ning, I once wrote in my diary, if one day I lose everything, will anyone stay to hold me and say, don't be afraid, I'm here? I never answered that question, but today I think I have the answer. I went back to my room, opened my phone, and sent him a short message. If you trust me, what will you do? Less than 30 seconds later, he replied that he would wait. Until you are no longer afraid, memories don't always come back with tears. Sometimes it just takes a piece of paper, thin as the wind, light as an unspoken promise. A week after the day he said, trust me one last time,
I received the task of following a group of volunteer doctors to provide medical support in a northern mountain district under a community project sponsored by Donich. I don't know if it was a coincidence or a secret arrangement. I only know that the person on the same bus with me was still Tom Dot. He sat in the front row reading the project report. I sat near the back, listening to music but hearing nothing. The bus swayed between the curves and my heart pounded in my own silence. The school where our medical team was temporarily stationed had been abandoned for many years. An old building with small classrooms, dusty desks and chairs, and a blackboard with faint chalk writing, "Good luck on your exams." I was speechless when I entered. It felt like I had stepped back to when I was 17. Something in my heart began to itch, not because of the dust, but because of the memories that were stirring. That afternoon, when everyone went to distribute medicine, I stayed behind to clean an old classroom that had been chosen as a place to distribute medical supplies. I bent down to pull out the old desks and wipe them clean. One desk had a drawer that was stuck. I tapped a few times and then slid my hand into the edge of the desk, trying to gently pry open the bottom. Suddenly, a small object fell out. It was an old envelope. The paper was discolored, the edges were slightly burned. There was no folded envelope, and on the outside was written a painfully familiar slanted line. "If you see this letter, I'm still waiting." I stood there stunned. My hands were shaking as I opened it. "Yining, I don't know if you'll read this letter, but if you do, please give me a signal. Anything. Because I'm sitting here under the royal poinciana tree with a wooden box and all the things I want to say but don't dare to say. I like you, not the kind of love that can change easily, but the kind that even if you forget or disappear, I will still remember like the first day you asked me if I wanted to trust anyone. If you leave, don't forget that I waited." I, Thom Dat, folded the letter, clenched it in my hand, tears silently falling. "It turns out you once left me a chance. I just never saw it. It's not that I intentionally avoided it, it's that I left too quickly. I thought you were silent. I thought I was the only one in pain. But no, he also sat under the royal poinciana tree alone with this letter waiting for the girl who chose to leave. That evening, I went out to the old schoolyard. The sky was dark and moonless, with only a cold wind and the smell of damp earth after an afternoon rain. The old phoenix tree is still there. I sat down on the ground, took out the letter, and read it a second time. This time, it's to understand each comma. This time, I don't read with my eyes. I read with regret and the pain of growing up. A moment later, I heard footsteps. He was not surprised, said nothing, just sat down next to me. I gave him the letter. No explanation, no beating around the bush. He took it, glanced at it, and smiled slightly, not as surprised as I thought. "You probably guessed I would find it." He used to leave that letter in his old desk. The school was going to burn all the old furniture, but there was a desk with a drawer stuck in it. I kept it. Maybe because I'm still waiting for the day you accidentally open it. I choked. What if I'm not by accident? He looked at me, his eyes peaceful. He would wait another year. One more life, any number. I put my head on the pillow, trying to swallow my tears. It feels like all the things I've been holding back have no reason to hide anymore. I asked him, did he ever blame me? He answered without hesitation. Yes, but not for long, as he realized I didn't leave because I hated you, but because I needed to protect something. I respect that silence, as you once kept silent so as not to drag me into your family troubles. I looked up, my eyes stinging. Thom Duat, I'm so tired. Tired of trying to forget. Tired of pretending everything is okay. Tired because my heart clearly wants to go back, but my mind keeps telling me not to. He gently put his hand on my shoulder. Then stop pretending, okay? I'm here. At that moment, I knew I didn't need to be stubborn anymore. Everything I was afraid of, you knew, and you still chose to stay. It's no longer young love, but a faith that has been tested by fire and it still burns. No secret lasts forever. No matter how well you hide it, how deep you bury it in layers of memory, one day, your heart will be the first to dig it up when you no longer have the strength to pretend. After leaving the mountains, I returned to the city, back to my daily routine, patients, shifts, reports, hasty meals in the cafeteria. But I'm not the same person I was 3 weeks ago. I started looking at my phone or standing in front of the 10th floor glass window, absent-mindedly. I often remembered every word he said, every look he gave me, every time he quietly did something small, because I started wondering when I would be brave enough to tell the truth. One weekend afternoon, I was transferred to the emergency room due to lack of staff. The shift is not too busy. I sat alone in the doctor's office, holding a cup of warm ginger tea, my eyes looking at the CT scan of a strange patient. Suddenly, the door opened without warning or knocking. It's like you always have the key to all the places I'm trying to lock away. I looked up and smiled. I thought he was on business trip today. He walked closer and pulled up a chair opposite, his eyes very calm. Canceled. I think I'm putting something off. I nodded slightly without asking further questions. It feels like I'm sitting in front of a final exam, and the question is real. How long do you want to hide from me? He looked at me for a long time and said, I have a question you cannot answer, but if you answer, I will not ask anything more. I gulped down the tea, my palms feeling a little hot. Do you still love me? People. My heart felt like someone was squeezing it, both painful and funny. We have come a long way to get to this question. The question should have been asked 8 years ago. I smiled softly, eyes downcast. He already knew the answer. He didn't laugh. He wanted me to say it, not because he needed confirmation, but because I had never said it even when I was 17. I am always the one who writes unsent letters. I laughed, but my throat was stiff because I was scared. If I say it, I will have no way back. But do you know, Thamdwat, I have lived for 8 years just to find a way out for myself. He stood up and walked slowly towards me. Then today, I will block all those escape routes for you so that you have only one choice, to walk towards me. I looked up and looked deeply into his eyes for a long time, then I nodded slightly. I love you. From the first time you put the piece of wood carved with the word trust in my hand, I loved you all the years I thought I had forgotten. And I still love you, even when I'm not sure if I deserve it. I don't know how he reacted after that sentence, because I bowed my head with blurred eyes. I only know that a few seconds later, he gently reached out to touch my hair, very lightly, as if he was touching something so fragile that it could break with just a breath. That evening, he took me back to the old house he had renovated, where there was an old royal poinciana tree and a window facing the sunlight I had mentioned. I sat down on the chair next to the table and opened the drawer. Inside is a small wooden box. He said he kept it for 8 years, dare not open. I touched the lid of the box. It is smooth with worn edges due to time. I open it. Inside were all the letters I had written but never sent. It is a broken hair clip. It is a piece of high school uniform fabric embroidered with 2 in and half Philly letters. I cried, not because I regret the past, but because finally there was someone patient enough to keep everything I lost. I'm afraid you will change, I said softly. I'm afraid the person I meet again will no longer be the young boy from that year. He held my hand and squeezed it gently. You changed, but one thing remained the same. If you hadn't left that year, I would have still chosen you. If you come back this year, I will still choose you. We sat in silence for a long time. No one said anything. All secrets are out. There is nothing left to hide. Only love does not need to be spoken loudly, but still hears the beat clearly. Time can change people, but there are moments, if beautiful enough, sincere enough, it will stay forever in the heart despite the year of victory and the times of loss. I stood on the 6th floor terrace, where the old white painted railing was stained by wind and rain. Below is the city transforming into late winter. This place 8 years ago is where I wanted to say something, but didn't have the courage. And now I am back, and Thamduat is still waiting. He arrived on time, not early, not late, no vest, no tie, no usual CEO look, just a gray hoodie, dark jeans, a little messy hair, looking like some freshman rushing to his first date. I chuckled. Are you cosplaying from high school? He smiled a little shyly. Yeah, I want today to be a replay, but this time I won't miss the lines. He held out his hand, and I put mine in his. His palm was warm, as if it could warm me through the cold years. We walked to the middle of the terrace where he had spread out a plaid towel, placed 2 cans of soda, a bag of cookies, and a small wooden mailbox. You said that year you prepared everything like this to confess your love, but that day it rained and I didn't come. He sat waiting until the cake was all wet. I pursed my lips to hold back my tears. This time I came. We sat down. The wind blew gently through the strands of hair on my forehead. He pulled a frayed letter from the mailbox and said, I wrote it in 12th grade, but I've never read it out loud in front of you. I nodded. He began to read, his deep, warm voice echoing across the open sky. Yuning, if you are listening to this, then maybe I have enough courage to say it. You're not the brightest kid in the class, but you're the only one who makes everything worth trying for. I don't often smile at you, but every time I smile at someone else, you get jealous. I don't know what the future holds, but if there's anyone I want by my side during the most important moments of my life, it's you. So if you agree, come to this rooftop. At 5 p.m. sharp, we will start something more serious than handwritten letters hidden under the desk. I turned away and quickly wiped the corner of my eyes. I'm sorry, I didn't come that day.
He was silent for a moment, then smiled. It's okay, as long as you're here now. We were silent, only hearing the wind and the small pop of a soda can opening. I took a sip and tilted my head to look at him. If I had come at that time, what would you have done? He pretended to think for a moment and then said very seriously, I will give you this wooden box and ask, do you want to try loving me? I laughed. That sentence is also used to confess love? He shrugged and smiled gently. At that time, he did not know how to speak flowery like now. I looked at him, my eyes softening. So what now? He looked deep into my eyes, no blinking. Now I know what to say. Yining, I have loved you for 8 years. No matter who you become, what your name is, or where you stand, I will still recognize you. And if you still have a part of your heart for me, then choose me this time, honestly. I nodded. No flowers, no rings, no need for a romantic TV drama scene. Just the man in front of me still remembers every little detail of the past, still persistently holds on to what I lost, and still chooses me again. That night when I got home, I opened the old diary I had intended to burn. The last page I ever wrote, if I were brave enough, I would go back there and say, I like you, without waiting for a reply. Now I don't need to write anymore because he is here and I have received a reply. There are memories that are not forgotten, just locked away. And then one day, the person who held that key will return. Quietly opened, gently as if touching an old wound. I don't remember exactly when it started. I no longer need to pretend to forget. Maybe it was when he opened a can of soda for me on the rooftop, saying he used to sit and wait in the rain. It could also be that when he read the letter at 17, I realized that I knew every word of it by heart, even though I had never read it. But perhaps the clearest moment was when I stood in my rented room, the yellow light shining on the mottled wall. My hands trembled as I reopened the old box where I hid all the things that once belonged to In. What's in the box? A broken hairpin, a faded student card, an unfinished letter, only 2 lines written on it.
thumbed Watt. If I'm brave enough, I'll be over it. Without the third line, I never finished it. Because that day I chose to leave. I put everything on the table, looking at each thing like looking at a part of myself forgotten in the past. Then I cried. Cried because I felt sorry for myself, the 17-year-old girl who had to hold back everything she wanted to say just to protect the person she loved from being hurt. Crying for the boy who wrote a letter by hand, carved the message on wood, and waited in the rain but never received an answer. I walked out of the room in the middle of the night. The city was asleep. Only the yellow streetlights remained, casting my shadow long on the sidewalk. I walked to the bridge near the hospital where we had crossed the day he had dropped me off after my first shift. The early winter wind blew through my collar, freezing me, but my mind was strangely clear. I closed my eyes, and then, like a movie being rewounded, all the memories I had rejected started flooding back. I remember the first time I saw him sleeping by the window, the sunlight shining on his hair. I thought he looked dangerous, but strangely attractive. The time he pushed the piece of wood carved with the word "believe" into my hand, without explaining, he just looked straight at me and took it. Because I know you're losing faith in everything. The time I said goodbye in the rain, pretending to be cold. I never liked you. His face at that time was not angry, not blaming, just as if some world just collapsed. I remember it all. Not a single detail is missing. I thought I had forgotten so I could move on, but it turns out I remember every piece. I just don't dare to remember. My phone vibrated with a text message. From me. I'm at your gate. No need to go out if you don't want to. I just want to stand here like the day you left, but this time I'll wait longer. I ran. Without time to put on my coat. Without bringing anything. I ran as if I was even a second slower, I would lose him again. When I got there, he was standing there, real, not a dream, not a memory. Thondwat with those eyes, with that figure, with that smile that seemed both helpless and comforting. I stopped in front of him, out of breath. Then I spoke each word slowly. I remember now. You didn't react, just stood still. I continue. You remember everything. I remember you used to call me a strong pretender. I remember saying I would go to the rooftop, but I didn't. I remember you standing in the rain for 3 hours without blaming me once. My tears fell. I remembered the pain I had left you alone. He came over and hugged me tightly without saying anything, just a hug that made me understand that it wasn't that he forgave me, but that he had never been angry. After a while, he whispered in my ear, "You don't need to remember because I have remembered for you for years. Now just trust me." I nodded, burying my face in his shoulder. For the first time in years, I allowed myself to be weak, allowed myself to cry like a 17-year-old girl who had just missed her first love, but luckily, fate did not abandon her. People often say love is trust, but I think love is not a one-sided belief. Love is a gift that two people must cherish, repair when it breaks, and believe that it is worth it. A year after I told you I remembered, everything changes. I became an official doctor, no longer a bewildered intern running around on shifts, nor was I the girl who hid in my mailbox every night, looking for things I had lost. Mr. Thumbdwat is still the CEO, still wearing a white shirt and speaking coldly to his employees. But to me, you are no longer the person you used to be. You are the one here. We moved in together in an apartment near the hospital with a small balcony filled with dried lavender and a wooden sign with the word trust engraved on it that he had carried with him for 8 years. Every morning he makes coffee, I toast bread, nothing flashy or special, but to me it's an extremely peaceful form of happiness that 17 years old could never understand. One April afternoon, the hospital held a small exhibition with the theme of memory and hope. I was assigned to be in charge of a special display booth featuring an improved model of an emergency first aid kit for remote areas. That was the original idea that Thomdwat had doodled in his high school notebook and then forgotten in the closet for many years. Now it's a real product that's being used, saving thousands of lives, and he's named it Erie's, short for Enin. During the opening ceremony, I stepped onto the stage, holding the microphone, looking down at the row below where he was sitting, his face calm, his eyes bright and gentle. I said, "I used to believe that there were things that once lost could never be retrieved. But today I want to tell you about a gift that has been hidden for 8 years through hundreds of unsent letters, unanswered waits, and many times I thought I had given up. That gift is faith, and I am so lucky to have met someone who never threw it away, even though I dropped it." The audience fell silent and then applauded, but I only looked in one direction where there was the only boy who made me want to believe again. That evening, we walked home in a light drizzle. He held my hand without saying anything. I gently squeezed his hand. It was warm and steady, like every time he quietly held an umbrella for me. I looked up at him and asked, "If I don't remember, if I never come back, how long are you going to wait?" He looked straight without hesitation. "Until you have someone else?" I laughed. "If you don't have anyone, I will answer lightly and continue waiting. Because you deserve to be loved to the end, whether you believe in that love or not." We walked past the park near our house. Last year's Royal Poinciana tree bloomed again. This time we stayed together under that tree. No one was waiting alone. He pulled out a small box that was not a ring, not a gift, but a new piece of wood, also hand-carved. I took it, and it had the word "keep" engraved on it. I looked at him and smiled. "No longer knees?" He nodded because believing was just the beginning. Keeping it is the hardest part. When I was 17, I believed that love had to be intense, passionate, and dramatic. Now I understand true love is when someone silently keeps everything you drop and waits for you to come back to pick up the pieces together. No matter how slow, no matter how long I had to wait. I used to be a girl who didn't believe in happy endings, but you somehow rewrote the ending for us with the very faith I had lost. And now I keep it, not because I need a promise, but because I know I'm mature enough not to lose it a second time.